Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU podcast. I'm Andre Hagberdian, joined as always by Paul Garrison. What's going on, Paul?
What is going on, man? A little Hawaiian vacation slash work slash everything, man. So I think I'm at the point where I need a vacation from my vacation. But really happy for the work that we did. And just excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, it was definitely a different atmosphere and adventure covering a game at that Hawai'i stadium. It's a small stadium, reminds a lot of people of, a high school stadium. There is no press box. There's multiple cubicles that we sit in, which was really cool. And I sat with the Hawai'i media relations team, and got to know them a little bit during the game. So that was kind of cool. But all in all, I think, it was a victory. A 4-game losing streak is over. Blowing a 17-0 lead, and then pretty much playing, the most important fourth quarter of the season and playing their best quarter of the season.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way, scoring 21 points, the defense forced 2 turnovers. They scored, at the goal line both times off those fumbles. That's something they had a problem with earlier in the season. So
right.
A lot of good, definitely still some bad when you factor in that you gave up 34 points. Mm-hmm. You needed those turnovers and some special teams plays to eke out the victory, but it's a win, and you can move forward from there.
No, I agree, and I thought that all of those comments are spot on. I tried in the article that I wrote about it, which anybody read it, thank you very much for reading. I was a little bit late. Was enjoying Hawaii. Was not going to stop and write after I did my duty of the work, which was I got to take photos and try to do my best. Don DeMars, PJ Bianco impersonation, but I thought that as far as the defense is concerned, and we'll get more into the preview with Nevada. I think at this point, expecting them to be able to solve the big play problem is probably not going to happen. I mean, right? I mean, at a certain point, you're just sort of like, oh man, that's just who they are. If they do, obviously they're going to make leaps and bounds on being better. But, if you take the aggregate of how many points they gave up, plus how many points they set up their defense or set up the offense or scored themselves, they give up 13 points. And I think that, this defense, as opposed to maybe other versions of what Kurt Maddox has done, I think that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for more of that Rocky Long style defense where it was always like, yeah, we're going to give up some big plays, but we're also going to cause big plays of our own. And so I thought to see that, and especially to see it at the time when it happened in the fourth quarter, I thought was huge. But when are we getting our grades? What order are we going to go in?
Let's go defense first.
Okay.
Defensive line, what do you have there?
Defensive line, I had at a C. I thought they started well. I thought that really more than anyone else, I thought that Hawaii came out trying to throw short passes, and I thought the defensive line did a really good job of getting their hands up and not allowing those. Conversely, after Hawaii kind of abandoned the short passing game and said, we're just going to chuck the ball deep every time. They held on to the ball and there was no pass rush. And so I thought it was both sides of it. We talked to Coach Hoke post game on a baseball field of all places, and he mentioned that when you pass well, it sets up the run. Well, that didn't happen for Hawaii. San Diego State was able to spread out and dedicate people to the pass, and the line is a big part. Was able to that. So I'm going to jump it up to a C plus. Would have loved to see more pressure on the quarterback, but again, those tip balls early that kind of I thought allowed San Diego State to get that 17-point lead, and then being able to not have any, just gaping runs that typically come when you're selling out to the pass. I thought, gave them an okay game.
Yeah, I had it a C.
I talked myself into that. Come on. Okay, but listen, you have to give Ryan Henderson. It's not the official.
Yeah, actually, I talked to Jamie at the basketball media today.
Okay.
They got that fixed.
Okay, good.
So
that's a big play.
That Ryan Henderson will get credited with the forced fumble in addition to the recovery. He got the recovery, obviously, but Zyrus is the one who told us.
He did.
Asked him that, he's like, "Oh no, that wasn't me. That was Ryan Henderson." So yeah, that they had to wait until Hawaii changed the stat.
I might go to B- then, bro. That's a big play in the course of the game.
And he also had a sack too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The problem I had, the reason why I'm sticking with a C is when you have a team that completely abandons the run and is dropping back and passing, they are. Yeah. They passed the time. They dropped back 49 times, and you only get one sack. That's not good. And I think whether it was the coaching scheme, the blitzes didn't get there, whether the defensive linemen weren't winning their one-on-one matchups, it was a combination potentially. But one sack and 49 dropbacks, I think C is warranted there.
Fair enough. I should also mention that Daniel Poco had also had a tackle for loss. So the line accounted for 2 of the 4 tackles for losses on the game. So yeah. I just, like I said, I think the other piece of the run part is, they couldn't do anything with it. And that was, that they kept doing that. But yeah, I think a very fair. Like I said, I started there, but talked myself into 53 net rushing yards. Pretty good.
Yeah, a linebacker, I'm gonna give them a B-. I thought Zyrus obviously had his forced fumble, which was what gave them a 10-point lead and basically sealed the game, even though Hawaii scored and they needed another fumble. But it did give them that 10-point cushion that gave them some breathing room. But not a lot of tackles. He only had 4. Cody Moon only had 4. Cooper McDonald only had 2.
Weird stat line. It's almost like they didn't tackle anybody the whole night.
Right. Yeah.
It was like long passes for touchdown or nothing.
Yeah, Baikaho only had 2, so the linebackers weren't very involved. Now, I know that there's a lot of passing, a lot of stuff downfield, a lot of the safeties and the corners made tackles, and that makes sense. But when you're not getting home blitzing, when you're not dropping back, covering guys, in the short middle or middle, B- I think was a fair assessment there. What'd you have?
Well, I'm gonna give them the opposite grade for the D line. That gave them the same grade you gave them, given that I gave the D line a little bit higher, sticking with that B-. But it's for the exact same reason. I think it's for the linebacker, and especially that fourth linebacker that becomes kind of that de facto rusher who needs to be their best pass rusher. When I'm looking at who that is, that's Cooper McDonald, that's Trey White, that's those people. And so the lack of pressure, I think, also goes to the linebackers. But for the same reason as what you said, but I thought Zyrus was very good. He's not going to have the huge stat line, but nobody is, and I think it just goes to show that the run and shoot can work and did work, and everyone had to make solo tackles on the edge, what they did. But I think overall, it wasn't the best night other than that one play by Zyrus. The linebackers didn't really stand out.
What would you have for the corners?
Corners was a little bit tough. I'm going to go with a C plus. I thought that a lot of the work that happened, took place against the safeties. Flip side is, there were some breakdowns on the outside as well. I didn't think, I thought they rotated a lot more than they typically did, which I think is good. Getting Chris Johnson on the field more. But I thought that there was a little bit of a noticeable drop when he played versus Des Malone and Noah Tomlin. So I gave him a C plus. Again, it's so much of their offense came on just like I think 11 or something plays that it's really challenging to want to say that they play too bad, but at the same time, those big plays continue to haunt them, and there were some monster plays in this game. 3 plays over 50 yards, things like that can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear this was the worst game the corners had played because they had been so good. Noah Tomlin gave up a 65-yard play. Chris Johnson gave up a 62-yard play. Des Malone had a penalty and gave up 3 catches for 26 yards. So he had a decent day, but he wasn't targeted as much. It just they only had they had 2 pass breakups. Those are 2 guys that are kind of leading in the nation and the top 10 in the nation in pass breakups. So they didn't make the plays with so many other opportunities. Now you could say when a team drops back and throws 47 times and so many of those plays were deep passes, they're going to connect on some of those because they are talented. I mean, that's what they do.
Right.
You would have liked to see some more breakups and maybe not give up the 60 plus yarders. But yeah, I think,
sure.
yeah, it's great. I mean, it was for a position that had really been the strength of the defense. I think this was a step back, but I think you still look at them as the strength of the defense even moving forward because of maybe how poorly some of the other guys are playing in the other units.
Absolutely. And to your point about the talent, Stephen McBride, who Tomlin gave up the 65-yarder to, was just named to the Blitnikoff watch list. He was put on there as kind of so he can play. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Safeties, it's interesting because I think when you look at the safeties, I think they are the unit that my comment about this defense being good, I think where it resides. They ran out a bunch of people, although I don't remember seeing Devon Celestine being one of those people.
No, you didn't.
So they had Eric Butler out there. Deshaun McEwen started. They had Josh Hunter out there. They had they played a bunch of different people in that safety room. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that 33 got in.
Yeah,
he played at Aztec, and
he played 1 drive, 3 snaps,
and they scored. That's why I remember. And I believe he was at the same one with it was the first series that Josh Hunter played, or at least that's my recollection. It didn't seem to really matter at all times. They all gave up big plays, big chunks at different times. When you win by 7 points and your offense throws, a really bad pick, like it was a bad pick. He threw he just didn't see him. And you're up 10-0 and you have all the momentum because you've held them to punts, each time. And then it looks like they're going to get into the game because of that turnover. And they obviously end up coming back into the game. And you get that pick 6 in a game where you win by 7 points. It's challenging not to talk about how important that play is. And it is a play I think that I might remember for a very, very long time because I am photographing and being a photographer for the game. And Andre can tell you how nervous I was. I can write forever, but I had not been taking pictures in a long time. And so the part in my, just exactly getting the camera in the right settings with the light and just as the light's going down. And so I was messing with it as Hawaii's offense was going the other direction, and I had moved to the other end zone, thinking that the offense, San Diego State's offense, would eventually come back down there, and that's where I'd be able to get some of my pictures. So I'm messing with my camera and get the interception. So I pick it up and I start taking pictures. But with what I had done to try to gamble to get the right amount of light and all the stuff, I just had the wrong settings. And so every picture is just like almost perfect, but then a little part's blurry that shouldn't be blurry, and that wouldn't have been blurry if I hadn't messed with it. So I'm always blurry, but I did was able to get a GIF, and the graininess of all GIFs kind of made that okay. But anyway, I thought Deshaun McEwen was fine. Again, they can't have those big plays, but for as big as that play was, I'm gonna give him a C plus.
I was going to go with a B because anytime you have a pick six,
Yeah.
I think that gives you a boost. But yeah, they just still give up numerous plays. Marcus Ratcliffe led the team in tackles with 6, and as we talked about earlier, when they're giving up a lot of completions, obviously the safeties and corners are going to make the most tackles, but still you got to make those tackles. Yeah, I feel like the safeties. Devon Celestine looked like he got in on one special teams play. Because at first I didn't remember seeing him on special teams. I thought maybe he was injured, and that's why McEwen started. So we'll have to see.
He was in.
Yeah, he was in. So, Deshaun McEwen started against UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have the greatest game. Didn't start again. So after the bye week, I don't know if they went back to that and said, okay, we need his speed, his athleticism, because we know he's a former track guy. So between, Eric Butler only got 2 snaps, which is surprising considering how well he had been playing. So yeah, I'm interested to see how the rotation does. If Celestine gets back in the fold at some point, Josh Hunter gets more snaps, Eric Butler gets back in the fold, things like that. So we'll see.
The thing with McEwen is he's been enlisted as the starter.
Yeah.
Subsequently, even all those weeks, like he's always, even though he hasn't been the guy who's been starting. It should be mentioned that we asked Coach Hogue before we asked about anything about McEwen's impact on the field. We asked about how he was doing, because obviously late, he stayed down for a long time. But they said a few times that checking, make sure that he's okay for a concussion. But I think everybody who was at the stadium thought that it was going to be something that was like longer and more serious. And then when he got up, I think there was a lot of relief there. So. All in all, I think that they're continuing to try to find the right recipe for that. I think is huge, and I think that the teams are going to continue to attack it no matter what.
All right, let's move to special teams. Are you going to go in an A+ here?
I was going to say, is there a grade that's higher? I know I'm the teacher, but is there a grade higher than an A+? Is that possible? Is that allowed?
If Jack Browning made the 50-yard field goal, I would give you an A++, but no.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, look, if you have to, I mean, let's be the hard-hitting journalist that everyone seems to think no media person is. There were some mistakes. He did miss that long kick. Sheldon Canley bobbled and returned his first attempt in his career at a kickoff that he should have downed. They gave up one return on a kick that was pretty good. No, man, that was great. they were stellar. And it's funny because I was watching Jack Browning before the game, and the ball wasn't turning over, and I was just like, just kind of like those are just like kicks. But gosh, he saved them for the game, and those were NFL type boom, and it was huge. But I think there was more than that. Kai Shaw. Being able to, the Hawaii's punter had a good kick, and he was able to return it 14 yards and give San Diego State momentum. I thought that was really good. They had a good kickoff return. Canley, he had a 24-yarder where it looked like he was pinballing around, doing everything. And of course, they were screaming down the field and were able to recover a punt that helped the Aztecs. So I think that overall, I mean, that's as good of a special teams performance as you could possibly want. And of course, they blocked the punt, which I'm so mad at myself. Same kind of thing. I mean, I'm on the yard line with the punter, and I'm looking over at Chris Johnson, and he's lined up to where he wants to make sure that Hawaii's gunner cannot go towards the sideline. So he's literally perpendicular to him. And so, like, if
Yeah.
you could imagine Chris Johnson, you've seen the picture, but Chris Johnson with his back to the Aztec sidelines with the gunner facing the punter, it just looks so weird. I had to take a picture of it. And then, of course, I get that picture of it and I hear I mean, boom, that crush of the ball, like, celebration happened. Got some good pictures of that. But
Yeah,
I
Eric,
had
Eric,
like 10 pictures of the punter after that, but no,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Eric Butler came across the punter's right side and blocked it, led to a field goal. So, unfortunately, the offense got the ball at the 13, but only led to a field goal. But I think they almost blocked another one, not the next punt, but the punt after that. So they definitely saw some stuff probably on film. Coach Deke is a wizard at watching film and finding stuff, and so they definitely used that to their advantage, and then helped them as the final score shows. They needed every play from the first play of the game to the last to be able to hold off and win that game, and special teams is a big part of it. All right, let's go to offense. Quarterback. What did you have for Maiden?
I thought that Jalen Maiden had a B. Had a B game for me. I obviously we already talked about the one pick that he threw. I think the most important part of his game, at least in my estimation, is he started poorly, and he was able to not allow the interception and the kind of slow start to be able to get to him. Everyone's going to talk about the fact that the defense had 2 turnovers in the fourth quarter that set up touchdowns, but they retook the lead. The offense needed to show up, and yeah, they got a 69-yard run, busted coverage, all those kinds of things. But like, so what? That's how many times has that pass, not been found, or you go back and you're, showing a tape on X, and it's like, look how wide open this guy was, and the Aztec quarterback missed him. You know what I mean? Like that happens all the time, and he did it. And so I thought it was a B. I thought that Ryan Lindley and maybe it was the contrast with it. We'll get into the running backs, but they really featured the run. And I think that is the style of offense that best suits who Jalen Maiden is. Whether that's allowing him in the play action, whether that's allowing him to, not have to be where just so much of it's on his shoulder. And I thought that inside of like that kind of a game plan, I thought he played very well. And I think 6 incompletes the whole game. Gosh, what else do you want from a QB?
Yeah, he also dropped the snap in that tush push 4th down play in the fourth quarter.
Right.
That in the second did give Hawai'i a chance to take the lead again with a touchdown, the 3-point game. I looking at the stats at the end of the game when I'm writing the recap, and it's 18-24 for 221, and you're like, wow, that's a pretty good game. Yeah. And you take away the interception and the failed tush push. He was only sacked once. Solid game, I think, bouncing back from that Air Force disaster, if you want to call it. Overall, not just him, but the entire offense, the play calling, everything you want to talk about on the offensive side was a disaster against Air Force, and it was a good bounce back from the offense.
Absolutely.
Running backs?
I'm also going to give them a B. I think that their numbers are not pretty. But they also have a lot of short fields. And I think whenever you so much of a game is about getting what you need. And they needed to punch through goal-to-go runs. And they did. I thought that Cam Davis, who obviously didn't lead them rushing, was tied with Jalen Maiden with 53 yards, 10 carries. Obviously, that's a good night. Being able to break a 25-yarder to give them momentum late in the game. That's what you're hoping happens by pounding the ball so much. They obviously, Hawai'i absolutely wanted to make the passing game be what San Diego State did. And I thought for one of the few games this year, San Diego State was stubborn in its approach and kept attacking the run, which I think paid dividends, because I think what that did was when a quarterback falls down and you get a 69-yard run, it's because that's the only guy that's out there because everybody else is dedicated to the run. And so I thought, you get 3 touchdowns from the running backs. Lucky Sutton's debut, I think everybody has been just waiting for him, and thought he showed an explosiveness. Cam Davis as well, that I don't think we've really seen from Keenan Christian or Jalen Armstead since the early part of the year, where they were just kind of getting up in there. And it'd be interesting to see how the carries go from now. Every time we asked about the running back, Coach Hoke mentioned Sheldon Canley, and obviously he got the returns in place of Keenan Christian. But it'll be interesting if he actually gets some snaps too. But I thought it was a good game. And yeah, you would love to have seen some big run that could have added to their numbers and made it a great game. With the way that the success that Hawaii had, keeping the ball away from them and stacking the box, adding in new pieces, and then most importantly, scoring touchdowns when they were needed. I give them a B.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back to your playbook about grading on a curve, and I'm going to give them an A-.
Woo, okay.
Because of that.
Yeah.
I think scoring touchdowns on those 3 goal line plays are things that they did not do consistently earlier in the year. You could credit the offensive line for better blocking, of course, but you can also credit the running backs for hitting the hole faster without hesitating, seeing the block, seeing the hole. I think Jalen Armstead's and Lucky Sutton's second one, they did have to kind of go through a guy before they got to the end zone. So it's a little bit of strength there. Cam Davis's has a 16-yard catch, which was not the typical running back catch we're used to. They actually motioned him out wide and he ran a route. Yeah. It was a short out and back in. Something I wanted Jordan Bird to get thrown for the last 3 years, and they did it with Cam Davis, and I loved it. That was a great play. Something that you see other people run, and we haven't seen San Diego State run something like that in years. Martin Blake executed a trick play. Now he didn't get credit for a pass because it ended up being backwards, so they gave Maiden a run. Right. Although it was close, I was surprised that they ruled it a run. But I think grading on a curve, I like what the running backs did. They were efficient.
Come on, tell me about Leo Kemp.
I was gonna say his catch,
Leo Kemp
making a defender in space miss. Yeah. I had a note to mention him as well. So surprised with Keenan Christian, only 4 carries. He came in as a starter at the beginning of the season. It just, it hasn't clicked for him, and maybe he's being set up to fail by some of the runs that he's getting inside and some of the play calls instead of trying to get him out in space. But it hasn't panned out, but other guys are stepping up, and it's a lot of guys. I don't think it's ideal to be giving 6 different backs or 5 different backs carries, but at least for one game, it got them the victory, and it got them 3 goal line touchdowns, and we'll see where they go here. I don't think at this point it's going to change. All these guys are still going to keep getting carries.
Right. Yeah, I think what's interesting about it here is King Christian is a team captain.
Yeah.
Martin Blake has been the guy who's carried the shield out the most, and he carried the shield out again. There's a kind of a funny picture because, again, it is so challenging for anybody who was not there to explain how weird this setup is for this stadium. But when San Diego State was running out of the tunnel, somebody's trying to explain where they're supposed to run, and Martin Blake takes the shield towards their sideline, and everybody else goes the other direction, and everyone's kind of pointing where are we supposed to go? But anyway, it was just kind of a funny moment. You have those guys who are obviously doing everything right. These younger guys are demanding carries, and so I think that's a good sign. And then I think as we go into the offensive line, one question that we've been asking is, if the running back room is your deepest offensive position group, which is what we've been told now, and they're unable to really get going, then maybe that's an offensive line problem, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they're not being able to find what they want there, and then of course the big change, and in addition to these, anyway, so the big change that everyone saw was that Drew as a party got inserted into the starting right tackle. When they did the change in the depth chart, like that was the only change for Nevada amongst all the other things that have taken place. Was Party's now in there. They still have not taken out Miles Morale. He still is the starting right guard, but he hasn't started at right guard for the last couple of games. So it's really interesting that their entire right side of their line has been rebuilt in the last couple of games. And then, of course, BCD sliding over to left tackle. And so if you're asking the question, like, okay, well, maybe they see it's the offensive line, and clearly with the changes, they wanted something, but they're also making changes at running back too. And I think that's an important thing to make that point, that the answer is probably both. They're not, the backs are not making the explosive carries that they want them to do. And at the same time, they want to see better play out of their offensive line.
On Miles, did you see Miles dressed against Hawaii? He was, because after the Air Force game, I was told that he had a knee issue, and that might have been why Dean Abdullah started. But he was dressed for that game as well, so I don't know whether it's precautionary or whether it's a performance thing to start Abdullah. But I was just curious.
When I asked about that at Air Force, the answer that I was given by the media relations, I didn't ask it to coach, was that it was probably performance related.
Okay, got it. Did you give your grade for the offensive line?
Offensive line, I'm going to go 2+. This goes back to what you're hoping to get out of the game. Obviously, they were able to be part of the group that blocked and got those runs on Lucky Sutton's first touchdown. Keith Bennett had an exceptional block where he really opened up that hole. But if you're going to go with an offensive line, and you're going to say here are 47 carries or 46 carries if you don't include the backwards pass to Maiden, you just would like to see them do more with it. And so it's fine. They didn't give up a sack, which again I think helps because you're with the run, but because you're running the ball so much. But all in all, I think that you gave them a lot of opportunities, and so I'm going to give them a C.
I went with a B-. The stats actually said that they gave up 1 sack, but I didn't recall that play. So that's interesting. But yeah, the offensive line, I think they've only given up 2 sacks in the last 3 games after they gave up 6 against Oregon State and 4 against UCLA. Obviously, those 2 teams are Power 5 teams. But it's a nice boost, definitely, since that game. The 3 goal line touchdowns, as we talked about, I think the offensive line plays a part in that. So I went with a B-.
Nice. I like it. I think you can make a really good argument.
Wide receivers, I went B+ here. And that's mainly on the back of Mekhi Shaw coming back and having a career high day.
Completely.
Not just the 69-yard touchdown, but that 130-yarder where he caught a comeback and spun around and juked upfield, almost scored a touchdown.
Yep.
Having him back, it gives them another playmaker, gives a guy that Maiden, if you ask Maiden, he said he loves all the receivers. He's built a relationship with all of them over the summer and spring. But that he definitely has that trust with Mekhi Shaw because they did it last year together on the field. And so I think it was a big boost to have him back, and his performance definitely was a big part of the win.
Yeah, I give him an A-. If you are only going to drop back to pass 24 times, nearly a third of those end up going to Shaw. I think that if you look at like some of the criticism to San Diego State's receiving core in the past couple of years, it's just the inability to get separation, where it seems like in every other game that you watch, there's separation. Well, Mekhi Shaw was getting separation, like frequent. He wasn't being forced to make tough catches. And he converted a few first downs. He obviously had the long touchdown in like that really clutch way. And I think that his emergence into a true top flight receiver, which obviously his numbers suggest is what took place, I think is a really healthy thing for the offense. And it's just it allows it allows the defense to become a little bit more predictable because you got to know where 83 is. And the coverages are going to be harder to design because you're going to have to make sure that you watch him. So I think coming back, you could see it, man. He was explosive in warmups. I mean, like you could really see that he was geeked to be back. Contrast that with from when he was forced to talk to us at the post game press conference. But Kai's a great kid. He looked like he was ready. He was tired, and he was ready to call it a night. But he obviously did a great job, answered our questions and everything. I just thought that was a great night for the wide receivers and a lot of this stuff. It was just clutch, man. It was clutch. Whether it was a third down catch, whether it was obviously a long touchdown. It was exactly. I mean, when the last play of the fourth quarter, I'm sorry, the last play of the third quarter, which is when Hawaii got the lead back, and then San Diego State, I'm gonna maybe miss one play, but the start of the fourth quarter is Canley's really good explosive run, kind of given a return, and then not very much later, that's when one or two plays later is when Shaw gets that 69 yarder, and it was just exactly what needed to happen. He scored right in front of where all the San Diego State fans were. So they got, they were geeked, and it was like kind of took the wind out of them when they scored before. The stadium was really into it for the first time, really into it, which, small stadium, 10,000 sounds like 30. And he took the air out of that building except for that corner of the end zone, where all the Aztec fans were. And so it was just a great time.
I didn't realize this at the time, but I saw it the next day. Like he took a bow
Yeah.
after the touchdown,
Yeah.
and that's so unlike him. Like
Completely.
I was surprised to see that. Like that was a little bit of his maybe passion coming out and wanting to celebrate, because he's usually very reserved, very even keeled celebration. So I love that. Tight end, I'm gonna go with a C here, mainly because they weren't that involved in the passing game. They obviously are part of the running game, and we talked about how the running game did nice things, even though their yards per carry average wasn't great. So I went with a C, but it was one of those kind of incompletes because they weren't heavily involved in the offense in the passing game.
Yeah, I think that's right. I thought that, obviously aside from the three catches that 81 got, it was not what you need from them. Mark Redmond they're still running a lot of two tight ends, although they ran a lot more fullback stuff this game. And I agreed with everything that you said. I gave him a C. I did think that there was a couple of times where Cam Harpole got open and they didn't find him. I think his future is really bright, just in terms of being able to run and to beat people who are DBs, which you don't see a lot of tight ends doing. But it was a workmanlike game, which is why I give them a C.
All right, well, that's Hawaii. They obviously shut down their 4-game losing streak. They are on a 1-game winning streak now. You wrote an article that came out earlier this week. Got a lot of I don't know what the right commentary on social media about negative fans. And Zyrus, we spoke to Zyrus post game on the baseball field, and he brought up,
I was gonna say, we didn't ask about it, and I would not have written about it if he had it first.
He brought up about how fans have been negative, about how fans have been saying they suck, and how
they suck,
and how they got tired of losing, but they basically can't think about what other people outside are saying. It's about them on the field. They're the ones that play. And I think that prompted me to share some news that of a parent, some commentary that I had with a parent several weeks ago that was related to that. And, there was a sentence in your article about that. And I think, a lot of people that I saw that had their immediate emotional reactions thought of it as some, a comment said on a whim based on one moment or one incident or one thing, and that's not the case. It was multiple conversations, very thought out, very justified in the sense of the explanations. And I guess the mistake is maybe summarizing all of that into one sentence into an article. I get that, but I think it heightens the sentiment based on the reaction that we saw when that article came out. You know, there's a lot of the word toxic gets thrown around a lot, and there is an immense amount of toxicity around the program right now. And it's not just fans. This isn't a blame the fans. This is everything scooped into one. And I think the fans looked at it that way, but I think there's a lot involved into it than just fans being toxic. It's the lack of support that was really more of the focus of the sentiment by the parent about what he's seen from other fan bases, from his friends' kids that are at other schools, and what he's seen both on social media and both going to games and seeing how rabid fan bases are. Being critical, every parent, every person understands being critical is a part of being a fan. It's that part of crossing into being toxic is where I think this was not a whimsical comment by one parent out of nowhere. This was a thought out discussion that we had, and that's how that sentence from your article came about.
Absolutely. And I think that a couple more things that I would want to emphasize is, again, this is not an attack on anybody. I don't think that, people, I think, approach us and they would like us to steer the program in certain ways as if we have the power to do that with the questions that we ask. And that's never been our aim. Our aim has always been to just communicate what's there, be eyes and ears and a mouthpiece to what's there. It was a family atmosphere. I mean, give me your thoughts. We are being led by the SDSU media people out of the football stadium, and there's a concourse, which is a wide sidewalk, whatever the right word is, between that and the baseball facility. And what did you see when we walked through?
Cheering and hugging each other parents. Like, obviously a win made people happy. It would have been different if it wasn't a win, but it was a festive atmosphere for sure.
Yeah. And it's not like one small area. Think about it more like it's almost like an outdoor hallway that had twists and turns on it, and it was packed all the way through there. There are 40 plus people for Tupualualu, who's from Honolulu, and his family, all in the same white shirt with huge like picture on the front, 99 on the back. They're all there. There's all kinds of people. I had one person yell at me that my grade was too low. The grades will have to be higher this week, and there's this sort of thing, and at both of us at different points, because people try to grab our attention. We fell behind getting to where we needed to be, and the fact that we had to say, "Hey, we're still working," kind of a thing. And so that was, for me, the big sort of cool part that I wanted to bring about. Adria Shaw was nice enough; she was there. She was nice enough to allow me to use some sunscreen at the beginning of the day. Thank you. But also to she was telling us about what was going on and the things that were happening, and it was a great event when Leo Kemp made his catch and made the one guy miss, and I mean, he got 8 yards, almost got a first down. It was 1 yard short, but from his family that was there, you would have thought that he was the guy who got the 69-yard touchdown. And so it was just that really big family atmosphere. And that's what we walk through. And then we go into the press conference, which again is in the foul territory of the baseball facility. And we're talking with very super informal. And Cyrus volunteers that the fans think that they suck. And then you did the right thing and followed up with it because he brought it up. We didn't go in there talking about the fans. And he reiterates, at the end of the day, they can think whatever they want, but we know who we play for. And it's clearly the people out there. And so this is, for better or for worse, this is a very family-centered team that Brady Hoke has built. That's who they are. The families are a huge part, and treating each other like their family was a huge part. Being able to, Adrian talked about how that there was, at Snapdragon, there's so much going on, and this environment was just way chill, and so people got to meet each other, and then in that setting, Cyrus's comments, they contrasted really, really strongly.
Yeah.
And so like I think that when you're at a place that's more, I guess less family centered, more high profile, colder, more distant, those kinds of things, I think that maybe the toxic stuff is just like, oh, that's crazy fans. But when it contrasts what the culture is and who these kids are, I think it can mean more in that setting. I think the other piece of it, and now I'm going to just speak for myself, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the other piece and why I think it can be toxic is because it does not matter what is shared on any social media platform. The exact same comment is made nearly every single time. Perfect example. San Diego State gets boat raced at Air Force. I do like to be positive. I'm not going to apologize for that. It's very thoughtful. I have researched it, philosophized it, did the whole thing about all this stuff, about who do I want to be, what voice do I want to have, etc. I don't mind being positive, and anybody can, argue with me if they want. I don't care. But so I'm looking to say something positive because I know that they still work hard, blah, blah, blah. And at the post-game press conference, Garrett Fountain gives this amazingly mature answer about looking in the mirror, and we have to get better, and who cares what we're going to do with leading anybody. We got to step up. It's us first and then everybody else. And I was like, oh man, that's a great answer. And the very first response was, wow, this guy is so articulate. They should let him speak and not the head coach who can't say anything when he's in front of the media. And it's like, that has nothing to do with the fact that Garrett Fountain just did that. Like every single, and we do a lot of stuff, like the baseball team, and with having him on the podcast, Sean Cole. It's like, oh, that guy sounds genuine and great, man. Maybe he can. You think Dutcher can be the coach of the football team too? And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. There's going to be the same kind of wet blanket of a comment every single time. And it's not that that any one single comment is really bad. It's like Chinese water torture, where it's just like a drip every single moment of every single day, and it's the same tired retreads.
Yeah.
And it's all true. I mean, they all have good points. You can say, if you don't think Brady Hoke is great at a press conference, so be it. Okay, great. If you would like to see him answer, okay, that's your business too. I'm not even saying that you're wrong. It's like, really, you have to tweet the same thing for the 47th time. Like, okay, we get it. Attendance should be better at Snapdragon and prices are too high. Okay. It's like how many times do you have to say that? And like, why do you have to say it when we're not even, when we have the soccer coach on or whatever it is that we're doing? And so
Yeah.
I think that's where that comes from, is at this point, and even in really toxic places that where again, people have crazy comments and stuff in other places, I think there's also another side to it. And the side is, that you come out and you always support the team, and there's positive and negative. And I think that, across this losing streak, where they lost to 4 teams that were expected to beat them, it's almost become like a one voice, and it's the same toxic voice, or I'm sorry, it's the unity and the fact that there's nothing else that's coming out. I think that makes it toxic, not necessarily any one comment from any one person or anything of that nature.
You made that comment about Brady Hoke is terrible at press conferences and should be kept in his office. Those same people that say that can turn around and then tell us that we need to ask Coach Hoke tougher questions. What the hell does tougher questions even mean? But it's like if the same guy you don't even want to answer questions to our easy questions, whatever that is, now you want us to ask him tough questions. Like, you know what? BJ Rains, the Boise State beat writer.
Yeah, I've met him.
I think one of the best beat writers in the country, personally.
Okay, I like BJ a lot too. Absolutely.
He was getting bombarded on social media this week about asking tougher questions. And I commend him for actually responding to all these people and like, because I can't do it. Like, it's just, I don't have the time. But if he's getting bombarded with the same question, like every media person in the country gets bombarded with these, like, what does tougher questions even mean? Especially for a coach, you don't even think answers, softer questions well.
Or the way that you want them to. No, and it's funny because I've always done a few times I have DM'd people who have made that comment of us, and I said, what questions? And every one of them has been asked. That's to me, right. it's like, and I sometimes I wonder if there's a disconnect. Like, you go onto YouTube and you see how many ever views, a press conference has, and it's not 10,000. And so like I sometimes wonder if like they think that the question hasn't been asked. Maybe they don't have the microphone in front of them or whatever it is. But like every single time they're very, very like I think thoughtful people that I can have like a real reasoned conversation with about it. They do bring up these are the questions, and I was like every one of those has been asked. Like I don't know what else you want that or some version of it. You know what I mean? And I can give you the answer if you like, and it might not be what you want to hear. I get it. There's a lot of frustration. But from my perspective, I feel like our job is to cover the team. And when the best player for sure in their front six speaks to us after a win, and what's on his mind is the message that the fans have been giving the team. And he is one of the leaders on the team and is frequently brought up to speak for the team. I think that that's part of the narrative of this season is that the fans, and again, whatever, call them weak, call them soft, call them whatever you want. But just the story of it is that there is this us against them. And the them is not the opponent. The them is not people outside of San Diego. The them are the fans and the alumni of San Diego State. And I think that just needed to be said because it contrasted so perfectly with the party and everybody together and being loud and the hundreds of people that were there supporting them, wearing red and black. There wasn't any place. I mean, I think I've told you this. I've hiked, like I can remember all 5 times that I've hiked in my life because I don't ever hike because I'm fat. And like, we're there waiting for our Uber. Somebody rolls down the window. My wife has an Aztec hat on and they yell out, "Go Aztecs." We're getting onto our plane, going back. 2 people had come out there to see the Aztecs. Everywhere on the island, there were people that we ran into who had come there to, watch the Aztecs, and, we always, right? You ran into people as well. So, yeah. So anyway, and it contrasted with what took place there. But let's move on to Nevada, unless you have something to add.
There's to add on to the asking the tough questions. Like there's this ridiculous notion that like media members are afraid to ask coaches tough questions because their credential will get pulled.
Right.
And BJ Rains, same thing. He said how ridiculous that was. Like, that is not true at all. Like, teams are not going to pull credentials because you asked a tough question. Now, let alone what the hell is a tough question? Like, what does that even mean? If you ask a disrespectful question, like some of the fans want us to ask, yeah, you can get it pulled because you're disrespectful and you're not a credible journalist at that point if you ask some of the questions that people want us to ask, right? Those aren't tough questions. Those are ridiculous, disrespectful questions. But both of us are, for the most part, are half full guys.
Mm-hmm.
We try to see, and maybe it's because we're a little older. Maybe I wasn't the same when I was 20. and I was a sports fanatic. As I've gotten older, but I like to see the positive things. And I've watched enough sports in my life to realize that not everything is going to go well every game, every season. And it's not always, and coaches are going to coach poorly and they're going to coach well. That stuff can change. A lot can change. A lot goes into it. That doesn't mean that coaches don't need to be fired sometimes. That, of course they do. And maybe at the end of the season, the right move for San Diego State is to move on from Coach Hoke. But trying to just dissuade that in the middle of the season when there's so many games left, and it's just that we are mostly positive because that's who we are, not because we feel like we have to be positive or else they're gonna not come on our podcast or they're gonna pull our credential and things like that. That's bullshit. It's bullshit, completely bullshit.
Yeah, well said.
Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. All right, Paul, moving on to Nevada. It's the first home game in 4 weeks. It's the only home game in October. Mm-hmm. It's only one of 2 games in October with a bye starting and ending the month, which is really strange. But it's an opportunity for San Diego State to go 2-0 in October, even up their record at 4-4, and have some semblance of a potential bowl eligibility and some crazy scenarios where a bunch of teams ahead of them lose to fight for a conference championship. So Nevada is on a 16-game losing streak. In one way, that's good to play them because they're not a good team, but another way, that's a very dangerous situation to be playing a team that has lost so many games and they're due for a win. How do you size this one up?
Oh man, I don't know, man. Well, the first thing is that they're 0-6, like you said, 16 in a row, 0-2 in conference. They've lost every which way you can lose. They've lost close games. They've lost games where they've had big leads. Texas State at halftime this year. They've lost, whatever you can think of. And yet you look at the spread, and it's not 14 points, unless people have moved it to San Diego State side. And you're trying to figure out, why. And I think the reason is because everything that San Diego State has struggled with, Nevada has shown flashes of being able to do. So Nevada's giving up 39.5 points a game. Okay, San Diego State doesn't score points. So it's like, the explosion to be able to do that. I think just San Diego State not being able to be great at offense might impact that a little bit. Then you go to their offense. Yes, they're giving up 17 points, only scoring 17 a game. They've shown they've gotten a little bit flashier. But what has been San Diego State's, there's been 2 things that have been San Diego State has consistently had a hard time with. Number one, mobile quarterbacks. They had a tough time at Air Force. They had a tough time in crucial plays against Boise State. Mobile quarterbacks. Well, who happens to be the leading rusher for Nevada?
Yeah.
Their QB. They've had a tough time with big plays, as we just saw in the last game. Jamal Bell, leading receiver. He has a long of 77. Spencer Curtis, their second receiver, has a long of 73. Devon Campbell, their third receiver, he has a long of 30. Go down to their fourth guy, a long of 33. Go down to their fifth guy, he has a 55-yarder. Their sixth guy, he's got a 43-yarder. They're picking up chunk plays they're big, they might, I mean, guys who have like 1 or 2 receptions on the year, sometimes 3 or 4, whatever, but it's huge. And so, like, what San Diego State has not been able to do still is prevent the big play, and Nevada has been able to get the big play. And so I think that the people who, have the casinos and always win, that's why they can build the big casinos. I think that's what they're seeing. They're seeing that this game is going to be a lot closer than maybe 0-6, San Diego State's opportunity to get to 500 and then get a puncher's chance at reaching some of their bigger goals and getting into a bowl and stuff like that. So I think, just like, my first glance at it is, I think that this is a dangerous game for San Diego State, because I think what Nevada it does well, which isn't a lot of things, is also what San Diego State does poorly. As we saw against Hawaii, you can almost kind of dominate, all except for a dozen plays defensively. And those dozen plays, if they're that bad, can make it a game. And I think Nevada's got that puncher's chance because of that.
Yeah, this is a matchup where both teams' leading rushers are their quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Doesn't say a whole lot about the running backs, but we're gonna see. I agree with you. I think the big plays have, every game this season is a dangerous game for San Diego State, because they just haven't proven to be good enough in all three facets at the same time to be able to go into a game regardless of who they're playing, whether it's a 0-6 team or a 6-0 team, to say, yes, they've got a chance to win this game or they've got a chance to lose this game. I think every game. And, looking at the statistics, like, San Diego State's offensive and defensive statistics are still pretty poor when it comes to rankings in FBS. They're still in the hundreds in both. And some of Nevada has better rankings in some of the statistics than San Diego State. It's going to be interesting to see if the offense can carry over. I mean, they had the Boise State game, the offense had a very similar performance. And then they went into Air Force and they put up 10 points and made a lot of mistakes. Now they come back and put up 41, 34 if you don't count the pick six. And we'll see how they bounce back against Nevada. This time, at least they're not playing Air Force. They're at home playing Nevada. And so you would think that they can, make the improvements, at least limit the big plays defensively, keep the offense going, do what they do in special teams, and hopefully come away with a double-digit win.
It is the thing. I think the other piece of it is the difference between winning and losing for San Diego State. I just, the way that they design things, the difference between winning and losing often comes down to, and it does it everywhere, but I think that it's less system. It comes down to beating the person who's in front of you. And if you're just a little bit better on that night than the people that are in front of you, you win. After losing 4 games, and again, say whatever you want to them, I think that they obviously, kind of wet the bed at the end against Boise State. But the other 3 teams are ranked. Come as a shock to anyone who's listening, but San Diego State is not a top 25 team. And so, that's all that showed. Yeah, would they be feeling really good about themselves if they had held on to that Boise State game and won that game? Absolutely. But you have those 4 games, and you have the bye week, and you have that bad taste in your mouth, and you put everything into, and you get it done. You get that fourth quarter win. That has the potential, and a bye week after it, and you start thinking about those goals, and you start thinking about, and it has the makings of potentially to have like an emotional letdown. When you go into the press conference and that's what people are asking about. Oh, Garrett found again another great answer. He's like, we have no right to talk about anybody with miscues like that. We have plenty of our own to be thinking about them. But I think if you're a Wolfpack fan, they score 14 and then 6 the first 2 weeks, and then they're 24, 24, 9, and then 27. You look at that Fresno game, and Fresno, they weren't able to score a lot, and some of those games have been closer. Kansas obviously was ranked. I don't know if they currently are. They're definitely ranked this year. They only were 7 points behind them. So I think it's a dangerous game. I think it has that potential. And the Aztecs, at the same time, if the Aztecs can build off of that momentum and put together, a good four quarters, I think it can go a long way to helping them to get a lot better in the bye week and then seeing where they're at for those last 4 games.
Yeah, Nevada's starting tight end, Kaliki Latu. He injured his ankle. He's going to be out per their coach. That's
Okay.
one less guy they need to.
Yeah.
A familiar name, Joey Capra, starting at right guard for Nevada. He transferred 2 years ago. He was a backup lineman for San Diego State. But you mentioned the teams that they played. Ohio, UCLA, and Air Force are 3 of the top, 11 defenses in the country.
Yeah.
And then Oregon State is 44.
Right.
Against those 4 teams, the offense has really struggled, not scoring more than 20 points. Against Boise and Hawaii, who are, probably in the hundreds defensively, they put up 31 and 34, right? So playing Nevada, which is the worst team defensively in the FBS, 510 total yards, you would think based on that logic that they would put up a lot of points and score. So we'll see if that holds true.
Yeah, and it's interesting because again, I think these are the kind of games where if you're we can talk all about this for days, but there are people who do not like the style of football that is played at San Diego State. I personally prefer winning to anything else, and I don't think that they can duplicate what UCLA does and beat UCLA. I think they have to come up with a different style of play to be able to be at that level. So like if they're aiming for the moon, which is aiming for the moon, it's doing what they're doing. Ball control, things like that. But the flip side of that is when you play a team like Nevada, that you might be a little bit better, new coach, talent-wise, that all those guys left to go to Colorado State, all of that kind of stuff, because more likely than not, unless some big place pop up on the offensive in a run that hasn't been there to date, you're going to lower the amount of possessions. You're going to do all the things that give you the ability to be really good against maybe some higher talented teams. Also can make games against teams with less talent a little bit closer as well, which is why finishing is such a big deal for the Aztecs. And so I think I'm looking at how have teams attacked Nevada? When I've looked at it, they've spread them out and then found success that way and then ran while they were spread out. And I don't know that San Diego State has the ability to spread them out and make them defend the pass first. And so I think they're going to defend the run first. And then can San Diego State still find the same, Nevada's giving up nearly 6 yards a carry. Well, clearly if San Diego State can give 6 yards a carry on Saturday, they're going to win. But I think there's going to be 8 guys in the box, which I don't think Nevada has been able to do too many times this year. And so I think that style of play, I think is gonna change just those numbers, and it's gonna bring them a lot closer, which I think it should say. So I think it's an interesting game. I think Aztec fans, are gonna see a good game. It's a 6 o'clock, so it's not like super late. And going back to the comments at the beginning, there are fan bases that are negative, but a lot of times those fan bases are still having the stadium be 75% full when they play. And, you vote with your feet more than anything else. You support with your feet more than anything else. And Aztec Nation, having a good showing, regardless of what the prices are, whatever the things are that people can say, I think goes a long way towards sending that supportive message. Clearly the team isn't receiving in their own words.
Yep, 6 o'clock Saturday night, Snapdragon Stadium. The game will be on Fox Sports 2. But heading into the bye, Aztecs definitely need a win to even up their record. That's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for listening. We always appreciate all the likes, subscribes, follows, shares, comments, positive or negative. And we will talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.